After I left the cinema, I found it very difficult to try and place where to put this film. It's not bad, it's not great, it's somewhere in the middle. It falls into the sequel trap of complexity over character and has lost a lot of charm from the first film, which lent heavily into the comedy and absurdity of the ineptitude of the family when it came to killing, whereas the second film leans heavily into rules and regulations and bureaucracy of the occult. There is such a thing as too much devil in the details. Let's get into Ready or Not 2, Here I Come. Ready or Not 2, Here I Come essentially starts off moments after the events of the first film, and Grace sat on the steps in her blooded wedding dress, wearing her yellow Converse, having a cigarette, and the house behind her completely engulfed in flames, and telling the police that she was having trouble with the in-laws. And they take her to hospital and observe her and have the detectives try and figure out what happened. And this is where her sister comes in, and she is her emergency contact. After that, we see Chester Danforth, one of the richest families in the world. He dies, and because he dies, this initiates a clause in the contract that somebody has to win and take his place. Because Grace had been married into this family, she is now the sole representative of that family. So when the lawyer approaches her and says, right, okay, please come with me now, she is taken against her will, taken to the Danforth residence, another big massive mansion, and 4 other families join her. There were initially 6 families, but 2 have now been killed and taken off the map completely. And so it's now up to these 4 families to fight it out and try and win the seat and become the head of the world and have immense power and wealth that comes with it. And because Grace had survived the original hide and seek game, it is up to them to try and chase Grace and be the first one to kill her will become the head of the organization. Same goes for Grace. If Grace is able to survive till dawn, then she also has the opportunity to become the head of the organization. So the problem with this film is that it relies too heavily on the rules and regulations of the occult. Elijah Wood plays the lawyer who comes in and facilitates all of the game and has a giant rule book and flicks through all the pages and being like, right, okay, subsection 1, paragraph 2, whoever dies on the field, the following immediate family member has to take their place and take the field and hunt Grace down. And there are all other types of rules like this that get bogged down and get confusing, and it's really frustrating. Also, the fact that there are like multiple families gunning for this one prize, and you get lost in who's who and which families are being represented where, and it just gets a little bit too bogged down in these rules and regulations. Whereas the original film, Ready or Not 1, like, it was just a simple story of survival, and that was it. That's all you needed. You didn't need to have it dressed up in all of this kind of stuff. What I found not particularly great was the fact that they leaned heavily into the satanic ritual and the occult aspect of the film. And, they're wearing the gowns, they're having like this wedding in the middle of the film, and you're just like, where on earth is this going? It is all over the place. You just don't know what's going to happen one bit to the next, and there's just too much of that going on. And like I said, it reduces the charm of the original film, which was more of a comedy. This makes it a more dark and more serious film, and it doesn't need to be that. It was fine just being sort of like an absurd comedy / horror film, and that would have been okay. It's really confused of what it's trying to be. Also, I found that the sisterly sibling drama that was going on in the picture was very boring at times. They just have one scene which would have been perfect and encapsulated, told you everything you need to know about this family drama that was going on, and how one sister left the other sister to follow her dreams, and how the dreams didn't quite work out. And you didn't need like 2 or 3 scenes to explain that. You could have just done it in one. And the fact that they just kept going back to it, it was just really quite frustrating. And you're like, oh, come on, we've had this, we've seen this before. What I also like to say is that they have what I like to call bad guy taunting speeches. So there's a lot of times where the villains, the people that are hunting Grace down, will be like standing over her body and just be like, I'm gonna get you. I told you I was going to get you. And it just felt like, yeah, it didn't take that seriously, and I didn't feel any fear or intimidation from those speeches, and I didn't feel like a sense of dread that came from it. And it just felt more comedic than anything. When a film is trying to be a bit darker than the original, it didn't quite fit. And it's really a confusing film. It's trying to be funny on one hand, and then it's going to be dark and deal in the satanic cult aspect of it, and it's all over the place. And it's really hard to figure it out. What I would say is, not Frodo Baggins, Elijah Wood plays sinister and evil lawyer very, very well. It's a very different role that we're used to seeing him in, and it's a refreshing sight. And I must admit, like, I think he was the standout performer in this film. Sarah Michelle Gellar does her part, I suppose, and her and her brother, that rivalry is quite interesting as well. The fact that they could be quite loving and joking around 1 minute and then cold and heartless the next. It's actually quite an interesting dynamic, which is quite good. And yeah, like I said, for the most part, it's okay. And there are aspects of the film that did have that comedy element, like especially when everyone sort of knows what's going to happen and they duck down behind the podium and then the body explodes. That is actually quite funny because they actually know about it, and it's not like that shock factor like had from the first film. So there are good and bad aspects to this film, and you just got to take it with a pinch of salt and just watch it for what it is. It's a horror comedy sort of ride, and that's about as far as it goes, in my opinion. So yeah, so let me know what you think of Ready or Not 2, and what is your favourite horror film to come out of this year so far. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe to my channel, and I shall see you in the next video.